Hey everybody, it's your boy Nathan Crash.
And Chris.
We're back. Welcome to We Get Bodied by the Internet, or Bodied by the Internet. We're gonna read more stories. Hopefully, today's episode's a better episode because I don't want to have to feel like, oh shit, I didn't mean to, this monster came down me.
Damn, dude, what the fuck you doing?
Look, the point is I don't want to fucking have to be an asshole every episode, but like, Jesus Christ, man.
Nathan got bodied on the last one.
I got bodied hard. I think that guy got bodied harder than I did, though.
That's true.
So today we're both gonna be reading stories. If you don't know how the format works, me and Chris will both read a story. At the end of the story, we'll give our thoughts. Then we'll give it a 1 through 10 rating, from 1 being the worst, or 0 being the worst, and then 10 being the best, obviously. If you're more than encouraged to put your thoughts and reviews of the stories in the comment section below. All you need to do to play our game is make sure you're subscribed and you have the bell clicked and that you like the video.
Easy, right?
Easy peasy. So go ahead and do that if you want to play this little game with us. It's a fun time. It's one of my favorite series that we do.
Go ahead, do it. We'll wait.
We'll wait. All right, good.
Without further ado, Chris is gonna read his first story. But before that, you're also encouraged to leave stories in the comment section as well. If you know any good stories that we haven't read on the channel yet, or bad stories,
I guess. If you want to see me get upset, you can leave those in the comment section too. Those are very much appreciated, and we're very open to suggestions and stuff. So, without further ado,
let's do it.
What's your story, Chris?
The Monster in My Friend's Basement by Griffin216. And here we go.
Hopefully this one doesn't suck.
Have you ever known someone that considered you their best friend, even though to you they were barely more than an acquaintance? When I was a kid, that friend was Henry. I was always nice to him when I saw him in class, but we never really spent time with each other outside of school. That's why I was so surprised when he asked me to come spend the night at his house for his birthday celebration. To say that it was awkward would be putting it mildly. I was either the only guest invited or the only one that actually showed up. His father, who I learned was raising Henry as a single parent, was a large but quiet man. After he dropped the store-bought cake onto the kitchen table, Henry and I were pretty much left to our own devices. Henry was a big horror fan. He showed me his room that was covered in posters of the Wolfman and Dracula. He had stacks of worn-out EC comics in every corner of the room. Instead of playing with G.I. Joes, he made me play with a Barbie doll while he chased her with some alien creature action figure. It wasn't my favorite birthday party. When the hour got late, Henry's dad told us to shut off the light and go to bed. I couldn't have been happier. I was ready for this night to be over. But naturally, Henry had other ideas. Within seconds of his father's footsteps fading away, Henry had a flashlight in his hand and was ready to start telling scary stories. Henry told me about the time his dad was attacked in the woods by a deformed humanoid creature. The monster had pounced on him and started to claw at his face, but he was able to overpower it and crushed its windpipe. But the creature kept coming back. The monster could show up at any moment and attack Henry's dad. Every time the outcome was the same. Henry's dad was able to overpower and kill the monster, only for it to rise up again and attack him later. Eventually, the monster followed him back to their house. It waited as the family slept and attacked that night. The monster killed Henry's mother before his dad was able to strike it down.
Ooh, this story's getting juicy. I like this. We're gonna talk about this.
Henry's dad set him down and tried to explain about the monster. How there was no way to stop it from coming back, and that it wouldn't stop until it had taken everything from him. So he had no choice but to lock it up in the basement. He warned Henry never to go into the basement because he might accidentally let the monster out. The whole story was pretty corny. Henry seemed annoyed when I laughed and told me how it was all true. He tried to goad me into going into the basement if I thought he was lying. Luckily, Henry's dad banged at the door at that moment, told us to quiet down and go to sleep. I gladly rolled over and shut my eyes. A few hours later, I woke to a full bladder and awkwardly felt my way along the dark hallway trying to find the bathroom. After I flushed and washed my hands, I made my way back to Henry's bedroom. I stopped dead in my tracks when I heard the faint sound of footsteps on the stairs behind the door to the basement. Henry's story may have been stupid, but when you're all alone in a dark, unfamiliar house and it starts to come true, a silly story starts to sound a lot more plausible. So I just stood there, perfectly still, and listened to the footsteps as the footsteps got closer and closer to the top of the stairs. Something behind the door latched onto the doorknob and started to wiggle it back and forth. Slow at first, but it quickly became more frantic. The door began to heave in and out as the monster behind the door tried to rip it open. The beast that previously tried to stay very quiet no longer seemed to care. I can hear its inhuman zombie-like moans as it put every ounce of strength into opening that locked door. I ran as fast as I could to Henry's dad's room. I was talking a mile a minute as I tried to explain to him that the monster was trying to get out of the basement. He practically had to shake some sense into me to get me to talk into a comprehensible manner. When he finally realized that I was trying to warn him that the monster was about to escape the basement, his eyes went wide. He told me to stay in his room and lock the door. I could see it in his face. The fear in that grown man's eyes left no doubt that Henry's story was all real. I waited, hiding under the blankets in that room for what seemed like hours before he returned along with his son. Henry's dad told me to come out to the kitchen where we could have some more cake and he would explain everything. It turned out it was all a dumb prank. Henry had snuck out of the room when he heard me leave to go to the bathroom. It was him behind the basement door making scary noises and pretending like he was coming to rip me limb from limb. His dad made him apologize and promised never to scare me like that again. I felt like an idiot. Henry's story was so stupid, and yet I had completely fallen for his prank. It shouldn't come as a surprise that Henry and I kind of drifted apart after that. I never really considered him much of a friend to start with, so it wasn't all that difficult to start to push him away after that disaster of a birthday sleepover. In fact, Henry started to drift away from pretty much everyone after that. A few years later, we entered high school, and he never fell in with any of the cliques. When I went away to college, I started to forget all about my short-lived friendship with Henry. That's what made it all the more weird to receive a call from him last month, completely out of the blue. We hadn't spoken since high school. He told me how he'd been in a car accident and was in the hospital. He wondered if I could visit. I felt terrible. I hadn't so much as thought of Henry in over a decade, but he clearly still considered me a friend after all these years. Reluctantly, my guilt about pushing him away made me agree to go visit him. He looked horrible. Plaster casts on both legs and one of his arms. It would be a long time before he left the wheelchair. I sat with him for an hour, but most of that was spent in silence. It didn't take long to catch up. There just wasn't that much to talk about. In my eyes, we were never that close, and time had only deepened that gap. Henry still lived in the same house. His father had willed it to him when he died shortly after we graduated high school. Henry said he would need some help taking care of the place for a little while after he got released from the hospital. Again, I felt horrible. He clearly had no one in his life. A mere acquaintance from childhood was the only person he could ask to help him in his time of desperate need. How could I say no? So a few days later, I drove back to the hospital and picked him up. I awkwardly lifted him into my car and folded him up the wheelchair so that it would fit in the car. I already felt like I'd bit off more than I could chew. How long was I expected to help him out? His house was a total wreck. It needed a new paint job, countless hours of yard work, and a new roof. It practically looked abandoned. Once inside, Henry had me take him to the kitchen where he immediately had me open several large cans of food and slide the contents out into 2 bowls. I told him I wasn't hungry and kind of joked that he should want something with a little more taste, having been stuck with hospital food for days, but he insisted, so I heated up the bowls and brought him back to the table. Naturally, I wasn't digging in, but I was surprised that Henry just stared at the bowl as well. He seemed lost in thought, almost like he forgot I was even there. The whole thing was very off-putting, and I found myself over and over looking to the clock, hoping that I can get away soon. Eventually, Henry broke the silence. To my surprise, he brought up that night, his birthday celebration, the last time I had been here. He asked me if I remembered that, like I could ever forget. So I just laughed and lied about what a great time I had. Then he asked if I remembered the monster in the basement. All these years, and it seemed Henry hadn't changed at all. For a split second, it even crossed my mind that all of this was just an elaborate plan to prank me again. That he had friends ready to burst out of the basement and spray me with silly string just so Henry could laugh at me once more. But Henry was dead serious. He couldn't even lift his head to look me in the eyes as he continued the talk. He told me that the monster was real, and it was hungry. Henry had been in the hospital for a while, and it had been far too long since the monster had fed. The bowls of canned food that Henry had me prepare weren't for us. He wanted me to take them downstairs. I was dumbfounded. Did he really think I was this stupid? I didn't even bother to answer him. I just stood up, grabbed my keys, and prepared to leave. If this was how Henry was going to reward my kindness, I wouldn't feel bad about abandoning him. But Henry grabbed my wrist as I tried to walk away. He looked up at me with tears forming in his eyes and lips quivering as he begged me to take the food down to the basement. Please take the food down. I'll explain everything when you come back up. It will make more sense if you see it first. Something in my mind told me that I needed to do this. I wasn't afraid to go back to that basement door that had terrified me so many years ago, but I needed closure. I needed to see that Henry was full of it, and there was nothing but a normal old basement door. Sorry. A normal old basement behind that door. I wheeled Henry over to the basement door and he unlocked it. We waited by the top of the staircase as I opened the door and started to descend. The smell was overwhelming. Not just mildew or mold like you would expect in an old dank basement. It was a living smell, sweat, feces, human filth. Something was down there. I slowly made my way down the stairs. The sights and sounds of that childhood night flooded my brain as I heard my own footsteps mimicking the sound of the monster from years ago. This time I traced the monster's steps in reverse as I practically tiptoed my way down the stairs with my shirt raised around my nostrils to try to keep the smell at bay. When I reached the bottom, I saw them. Huddled in a dark corner at the far end of the basement, I dropped the bowls of food and they clattered on the concrete floor, alerting the others to my presence. They barely had the strength to lift their heads and look upon me. Their skin was stretched tight from starvation, revealing the curve of every bone on their body. Heads were nearly bald from malnutrition, and they were covered in scars. They looked every bit the monster that Henry described to me that night so many years ago, but now I knew better. They were human, beaten, abused, and tormented, but just as human as I was. Slowly they crawled towards me. I was still frozen. It was just like when I was a child. They clawed their way across the floor, but their outstretched hands weren't coming for me. They wanted the food that was spilled around my feet. The chains that were latched tightly around their ankles stopped them well short of reaching. I looked in horror at the scars of years of struggling against those chains had created. The skin all the way up one of the legs was red with infection, but they didn't stop trying. They stretched and pawed at the ground, trying to get just a little closer to the food that was just beyond their grasp. I'm ashamed to admit that I backed up and started to run up the stairs. I stopped when they started moaning. Identical to that sound I heard behind the door when I was a child. I turned and looked and saw their pleading faces, their mouths empty of tongue and teeth. When I turned back around, Henry was staring down at me from the top of the staircase. He had his one good hand latched tightly around the door, ready to slam it shut. "Finish feeding them," he said coldly. I stood there, still frozen, but my mind was racing. I was terrified at what I saw down there, but not by Henry. He was the true monster here. Not these things that he kept locked up in the basement, but right now, Henry was no threat to anyone. Henry must have seen it in my face. He was used to controlling this pair of captives, and didn't like seeing the look of defiance on my face. He quickly slammed the door shut, and I can hear him struggling with the key as I sprinted up the stairs, 2 steps at a time. I launched my shoulder into the door, knocking Henry over and spilling him out onto the floor before he could lock me down there in the basement. The moans from the captives in the basement still echoed behind me, but I didn't stop. I ran straight out the front door and immediately called the police. Henry was surprisingly forthcoming when they interrogated him. He hadn't planned on locking me down there with him. He wanted me to join him, to become part of this, just like he had done when his father had first shown the basements and his captives to him so many years ago. It turns out that the monster in the basement was his father's own rage. His father held kidnapped girls in the basement for decades. Abusing them allowed him to keep his monstrous side safe and hidden from the world. When Henry was old enough, he recognized the monster inside of him and allowed Henry to join him in that basement. Henry hadn't planned on adding me to his list of captives. He wanted me to join him as his new partner while he recovered from his injuries. I'm tormented by my memories of that night. The sleepover at Henry's house. Even though I eventually became their savior, I'll never be able to forget that I'm directly responsible for preventing their escape all those years ago. I doomed them to decades more time trapped as captives in that basement because when I heard them, I ran and alerted their captor. I allowed the monster to continue to thrive in that basement.
Yo, that story was sick.
Yeah, it was pretty dope.
I actually really liked the story.
Yeah.
That would be a great movie.
It twisted so many times.
Yeah.
I was like, "Fuck, there's a monster."
There is a monster.
Wait, like,
Yeah.
oh, there's no. Like, oh, he told this story. It's like, oh, there's no monster. And it's like, oh shit, there is a monster. And then it's like, oh, there wasn't a monster.
That's actually,
oh, there is a monster.
That was really why, like, really early on, I was like, oh, I like the story, because I was like, I kind of had like a general idea of where the story was gonna go. I mean, it went like way off the rails, like not in a bad way, but like, I liked the idea that they played with the conception of like two kids telling each other stories. And like that kind of like you full of shit.
Yeah.
And like that, and then like the kind of like nervous anxiety that would cause you when you're like in a house that's unfamiliar to you.
Yeah.
And then like, so like I don't know, this story was like, it was really fucking good. Like
it was fun.
It used a lot of like really like it. That again. The story was very well planned out.
Yeah. Flowed very well.
It flowed really well. It never dwelled too long on one thing, which is something I like. Like, even like the reveal of like, you know, the quote unquote monsters in the basement. Like, it didn't dwell on that super long, and it definitely could have like gone on way longer than it should have. And I like the idea of them playing and subverting the idea of like the motif, like, which is monster in the basement.
Yeah. And
so like I really did like I did like that, because then it kind of plays with the like your conception of, or your preconception of the dad, because the dad's like a tall, like a big quiet dude, like that's real, like it kind of paints it in a much like scarier way, because it's like, because then you realize what happens when, like, what happened that night is that he went down there and like fucking beat the shit out of him. Like,
yeah,
it's like really fucked up.
Yeah, it's even more fucked up when you realize why they're fucking slamming on the door, because like they knew someone else was in the building and they were trying to get their attention.
Yeah, and then but they told him the story about a monster that freaked them out instead.
Yeah.
So it was.
I really liked the conclusion.
The conclusion's
I was very glad that they had gone with like
he gets
out, the protagonist escaping rather than Henry getting stuck down there.
Yeah. Because that's what I thought was gonna happen for a second.
That's what I was hoping wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's kind of lame.
Yeah, exactly. Because if he gets stuck down there, it's like it kind of just like, well, I mean, it still would have been a good story.
It's like him telling the story from the basement. Yeah, it's like, I don't know. I feel like it would have been too predictable.
Someone sent help or some shit, and they'll be like, "Ah, come on, dude."
Yeah.
I mean, it was a really good story.
But no, it was much more realistic for him to be like, "Nah, fuck you, dude. Like, like you're crippled. What the fuck are you gonna do?" And then like slam through the door. He's like, I'm out this bitch.
Yeah.
It's way more realistic and yeah, it's just a better conclusion altogether.
Yeah, it was a really good story.
Yeah, and it was fun reading it too.
This is one of the more this one I'm gonna give a very hearty like 9.
Yeah?
I'm gonna give it like a 9. Cause it as a story it gets a 9. It's not particularly scary or like really unnerving.
Yeah.
But it's a good story. It's structured very well. It knows what it's trying to do. It doesn't meander or dwell on certain things too long. And like I kind of like how every little sort of bullet point or like kind of permutation that you could have with the story is sort of addressed in some way. So like, yeah. But it's still like it doesn't like hold your hand and explain absolutely everything. So it's kind of nice.
Yeah, no, I like it a lot. I'll probably give it an 8 though, just because it wasn't particularly scary.
Yeah.
It wasn't like super unnerving. But as a story, it was great. It was a good story.
It was a really good story.
Good job describing things.
Yeah, the descriptions were very good. The smell, I actually like imagined how horrible that must have smelled.
Yeah. It was
and I like how he very like in a very like for it's foreshadowing, he used the term human filth.
Right. Right.
So like that's sort of foreshadowing, and I thought that was really nice of him to do so.
Yeah.
Because he could have very easily been like, it was some undescribable smell. I've never smelled anything like that. Like it was really, I think it works in like favor of the story because how the story plays out. Like,
right.
He described it in such a way, and like even I thought it was an odd choice of words up until like the reveal is made, and like I don't know. Who wrote the story?
This was Griffin 216.
Griffin 216. It's an 8.5. I'll give it an 8.5.
Great fucking job.
It was a really fucking good story.
That was a great story.
I hope you write another story soon, and I hope you get to read it because that was really well put together. I mean, lean a little harder into causing like distress, and then actually the one thing that did kind of like there was one scene that did like kind of get me was the fact that like they didn't have teeth or tongues in their mouth.
Yeah.
And like that did kind of fucking freak me out because he dropped the bowls or whatever, and I picture them like just like clawing like right beneath his feet, and their feet are getting torn up by the chains.
Yeah.
Like visually.
And then they're moaning. They're moaning with the no teeth and the tongue.
Yeah, so it sounds more like.
And their tongue.
Yeah.
You know.
That should like. That'd be fucked up.
Yeah.
I mean, if you had leaned a little harder into
he
that.
He described them as zombies at some point, which was very cool too.
Which was smart.
Yeah.
Because that's all you'd really be able. You wouldn't be able to articulate sounds and shit.
Yeah, no.
So that would explain, like, because I was like, all right, a zombie, but like now it makes like it's smart because going back and thinking about some of the details make a lot more sense again.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, one of my critiques that I had previously. So yeah,
But yeah, no, everything was super cool.
It was solid. I mean,
I liked how the monster was strong in the beginning, of the story, but because Henry had been gone in the hospital for so long, they got super weak and like they were starved.
I think it's really fucked up now that I think about it, like the story about Henry's dad crushing one of the monster's windpipe.
Yeah, because like there's
that's
that realism in the story now.
Because you realize that like, and he's like, oh, the monster keeps coming. Well, it's like because he keeps kidnapping little girls, and that like that he like when he's talking about like that not only did Henry's dad kill a girl, but he told Henry as a child about it.
Yeah, without him really knowing.
Yeah, and like.
And then eventually he told him like.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, you're fucked up like me. Like this is what we do. This is what we do. Yeah, this is what we do to keep the monster at bay.
Yeah, and it's like that's super fucked up.
Yeah.
The story's really fucked up. It is fucking like if I put myself in there hard enough, it's a really fucking scary concept. It didn't lean super hard. But I think it's to the story's benefit that it didn't try too hard to linger on like the more. I think it dealt with like the psychological horror a lot more than it tried to deal with like an atmospheric, like with it in like the atmospheric sense.
Yeah,
where it tried to like hit you with a bang. So I think one of the best sequences was him going down the stairs. It was one of my favorite sequences in the story because at that point my brain was fucking going crazy. What if that thing just fucking runs up the stairs?
My favorite part is like Henry's turnaround, for him being like this like meek
little weirdo,
for him to be like, dude, finish feeding them.
I just thought about it. They fucking played. He made him play with the Barbie, and he had the monster chase the Barbie around.
Oh yeah.
Ugh, dude, this story is.
So that's like first signs.
Yeah. Beautiful story. I'm proud of you.
Yeah, that was great.
That was a really good story. Thank you for that.
I like how sad it is.
It is really
like
fucking
for
sad.
Henry at the end too, because it's like he also wanted someone to share in this like perverse fucking thing that he does.
Yeah.
Like so like despite like all of like the gruesome transformations that Henry has gone through like over the course of like his life so far, like
he still sees him as his friend.
He still sees him as his friend and is like, Like,
was like, oh,
oh,
no.
well, my dad, like, sort of passed this to me, and, like, I want to share this with you.
Yeah. It's really fucked up.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
It's really fucked.
Good job.
Good
I
job.
love it. It was great.
Well, now, time for me to read my story, which
Yay.
probably won't be as good as yours.
You never know. I told you we'd get a good one out of these.
Yeah, I mean, fuck, dude. I was really hoping we wouldn't get another one of those. Like, oh. No, real shit. Good job, Griffin. Griffin, not Griffith. If you were Griffin, I'd hate you.
Griffith did nothing wrong, dude.
Oh my god, get out of here, guy. This fucking the audacity. Alright. So I'm gonna start off by saying I'm kinda worried now. Just by the name of this title alone. So the name of this story is I Hate Mother's Day. The cleanup is horrendous. So let's dive right into it, boys and girls. Last night I waited, I finally saw. It happens once a year, no matter where I move to, no matter how far from civilization I get, there will be a dead animal on my front door, buried in an inch of dandruff. Sometimes it is a raccoon, other times it is some poor neighbor's pet dog. The teeth are always missing, and flakes of dead skin are the size of dimes. The most fucked up part, I end up missing my mom. Mother's Day is a bitch for me. It was hard enough to. The most fucked up part, I just end up missing my mom. Mother's Day is a bitch for me. Okay. It was hard enough before this started happening. My mom died 10 years ago. I've spent my entire adult life without her guidance. The pain of grief is mostly gone. It has been for years. But this Hallmark holiday sneaks up on me. To me, it is just a reminder of what I've lost. She was not just a parent, she was a friend. One who was always there when I was bullied and picked on for being too sensitive. Until she wasn't. So for the first 5 years after her death, while others bought cards and flooded Facebook with cheesy memes, I bought a six-pack and drank myself to sleep. That was the first 5 years. Then the dead animals started showing up. I was bullied relentlessly as a child. I've always worn my heart on my face, and I could never hold back a smile or tears. It made me a target. Boys aren't supposed to cry. They are supposed to die with a frustrated liver and stone-faced, estranged from their kids. I thought that becoming an adult would make it easier, but living in a small town means that nothing truly changes. Your childhood bullies become the bitchy people whose tables you wait. The first year, it was a raccoon. Given my history, I figured it was an especially malicious prank. Sure, the dandruff was weird, but what part of it wasn't? I moved as soon as I could. Fuck that hick town. A year later, living on the 6th floor of a city apartment, it happened again. This wasn't on the building's stoop, mind you. It was right in front of my apartment door. A calico cat belonging to my next door neighbor. No teeth. Everyone there suspected me of doing it. They always do. So I continued to move. 2 separate towns. 2 states away from each other. But it never stopped. Once, 6,000 feet up a mountain in a cabin, a black bear that time. Then in a sterile suburb, a golden retriever. Security cameras never pick anything up. This is starting to sound familiar.
Yeah.
They are broken by morning. My neighbors never see anything either. I'm back in an apartment now, the kind with a guard at the door. I nearly go broke each month paying for it. Last night I came home with enough energy drinks to make my doctor cringe. Some eye drops and a brand new stool. High tech this plan was not, but god damn it, it didn't need to be. I perched myself right in front of my apartment's door, found some audiobooks on my phone, and cracked open an energy drink. I leaned my head against the door and watched through the door's peephole. By hour 2, my back hurt and my forehead felt raw. Through the fisheye lens, I could see a stretch of 200 carpeted feet straight out of the shining layout in front of me. I watched every neighbor enter their apartment for the night. I waited, and I grew tired. The energy drinks just made me anxious and jittery. At 1:15 a.m., I saw it, a naked figure in the distance at the end of the claustrophobic hallway. The hallway door did not move. It did not walk in. In a moment, there was no one there, and in another, there was. I double-checked my locks. It only took a second, and when I looked through, the figure was closer. Its hair was stringy, its body wrinkled with a distended belly. My mother, clutching the antlers of a dead deer behind her. My breath stilled, my heart sank. I blinked and she was 100 feet closer, as if she teleported. Dead deer in tow, I pulled out my phone and dialed 911, and then stopped before hitting the call button. What would I tell them? Did I believe it myself? I looked through the peephole once more to see the face of my mother inches away from the door smiling. No, a smiling is something that the living do. This was a facsimile of joy. Skin had completely covered her eye sockets. Behind a yawning gap in her teeth, her tongue writhed like an oyster fighting to get out of its shell. Her bony hand reached out to the door. I backed away, nearly falling off my stool to discover that the cracks in my door were being filled. The light of the hallway underneath my door suddenly blocked. Every crevice was suddenly covered in skin. I screamed as loud and as shrill as I ever have. I suddenly felt a presence behind me. I turned around and found nothing. With reluctant yet feverish curiosity, I looked through the hole once more. She was gone. It was 1:16. The whole terrifying ordeal only took a minute, but it felt like a dozen more. The light slowly crept back in from under my door as the skin turned dead and flaked off. I did not have the courage to go out until the sun rose. The dead deer she left me, like the other animals, had no teeth. Its lips had been chewed off, its bloody gums bare and open for all to see. Like the others, it was buried in dead skin, large dandruff-like flakes the size of dimes. Nothing was left growing on my door. Nothing was left growing on my door? Okay. I have been haunted by her for a decade. I forget about her, I move on, I try to live my life, but every other Mother's Day sneaks up on me. I open my door to greet the day and are met with a grotesque pagan-like offering of death. I cannot make sense of it. Maybe there is no meaning to make sense of. So I move so goddamn far away, but I can never shake her off. The most fucked up part about all of this, when I wake up to a poor dead animal on the foot of my doorstep, I just end up missing her. Memories of her life are bittersweet. They're always happy at first, but inevitably tainted by the bitterness of her passing. I find myself in public having to hold back tears while I'm on the bus or in line at the grocery store. It is a chore cleaning up after her. At least the deer wasn't as bad as the bear, but moving such a massive dead thing and hiding it is no easy task. I do it. I always find a place to hide it, but next year it will be more grotesque. Next year it might be bigger, and I spend the time in between trying not to think about it.
Huh.
I'm trying to come up with a rating for that one.
I'll give it a 7.
I was gonna give it like a 6. I was gonna give it a 6.
The description was fucked up.
The description was fucked up. Yeah, it was very Silent Hilly.
Yeah.
I'll give it a 6. I'll give it a 6. It wasn't a bad story.
Yeah.
It just didn't hit me with the oomph that I feel like it meant to.
So she shows up out of nowhere.
Yeah, she shows up out of nowhere on Mother's Day.
And then she disappears
After a minute. So she just shows up, drops the shit off, and then leaves.
Well, I don't think she simply disappears. I think that dead skin is her. She fucking
deteriorates.
Disintegrates into whatever's left on top of this animal.
Yeah.
Why the animal's there, I have no idea.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like I don't understand the ritual that's occurring.
Yeah, like what? Like, is it like a gift?
Yeah, like because I don't get it. I don't know why. I don't know, like, if she's doing it to like protect him or something. Is this like some sort of like ward against like evil or some shit? Yeah. Like, I don't know, because it really just like, it's like, if your mom loved you, like, I'm like, you know, like, why is your mom fucking trying to fucking scare you and leave dead animals in front of your house, like, in a really mangled and like,
maybe it's a metaphor for his like bitterness and like
about her dying.
Yeah, about her dying and like unwilling to like
move on,
let her go.
Yeah, like she's always at his doorstep, and like it happens on Mother's Day,
and he's like, instead of like confronting these feelings,
he shuts the door on him and just cleans it up.
Yeah, and then runs away.
Yeah, runs away and just, yeah, because like he always leaves. So if you know, because yeah, the thing is, if you know she's gonna show up, what's the point of running?
Yeah, right.
So yeah, I think it's probably like a manifestation of his like his inability to move on or something.
Yeah.
I mean, either way, I think
Sort of like yeah, because it didn't happen at first. It didn't happen immediately after she died.
Yeah, it just started happening.
He he drank himself to sleep every night for 5 years.
Yeah,
or not every night, but every Mother's Day for 5 years.
Yeah.
And then after that is when it started happening.
Yeah, it was like
and so he's sort of like
yeah,
fostered this
resentment,
this sort of resentment over something that he had no control over, and instead of using that to be like productive and moving on, he sort of like
detrimental.
Yeah, he sort of dug himself into a hole, fell into like a bigger spiral about it.
Yeah, because it's because as opposed to being like, fuck, well, I have to move on with my life, he like kind of dwelled on it.
Yeah, that seems like that's the most likely explanation for me.
It's like it's like symbolic.
Yeah,
I mean, I feel like a lot of it's like because it's like a lot of it sort of is there sitting there like sort of addressing like how he sort of feels about things. So I think like a lot of it's sort of like it's like an inward look, and maybe that's just sort of like his sort of internal manifestation for that.
And then and because this like really grotesque thing happens every year, and instead of him being like fucking scared, he's more like
sad,
more like introspective about it, and it was like
it's like yeah, it's like my mom left a mess.
Yeah, well, not even that, because he didn't know it was his mom until this encounter. But up until that point, it was like, man, I wish my mom was here.
Yeah,
like, and every time like clockwork.
Yeah, he's like, oh man, I miss my mom.
So it's
Yeah, it's a good story.
It is a good story. I like it.
I'll give it like a 6.5.
Yeah, especially because of like the implications we just talked about.
Yeah, I thought
I'm willing to bump it up to like a 7.5, like a 7.5.
Yeah, I didn't think it was like a bad story. I just felt like I feel like it didn't hit like the emotional resonance that I felt like it was going for.
Yeah, it wasn't like I wasn't like, yo, what? Like there wasn't like, there wasn't anything to get super crazy hype about, but it did leave me in thought, and and I thought that was cool. Yeah,
that's very
thought provoking.
If it didn't really leave me like feeling uneasy, but I was intrigued by how like the scene was sort of set, like the context of everything was laid out in a very like it had like a very authentic sort of flow to it, so it was really easy to read through, and like I liked it. I liked it a lot. I'm glad we didn't read two shitty stories today. So I want to just thank our boy real quick. Good job to PN Wood Writes. Keep it up. I hope we get to read something from you again soon.
Yeah, I really like your writing style here.
Yeah.
Your narrator has a lot of character.
Yeah. He narrates with color, I guess.
Yeah, it was very colorful. I like that a
lot. There's a lot of texture, I guess, is how I would because it's like he narrates like he's speaking to you.
Yeah, and that's awesome because and then not only that, it's like an articulate character. Like I'm not the sentence structure isn't repetitive, and I don't feel like I'm like saying the same thing with the same intonation over and over again. I think it was cool. And then this underlying theme that you've written is very good too. I like your writing style a lot.
Yeah, it was nice. Like it was refreshing. It was nice to see someone kind of like flex their writing muscles.
Yeah.
Like as a scary story, I give it a 6. I think it's like a really well written story though.
Yeah, it wasn't terrifying. It was a little spoopy. The descriptions of the mom was pretty spoopy.
Yeah.
But
there wasn't enough of that.
It wasn't like I wasn't like terrified.
Yeah, there wasn't enough of that to like because the thing is like and like I respect it in the sense of like I still think it's a really good story. I'm only giving it like a 6.5 as like a scary story.
Yeah.
Because the writing carries it most of the way there. but as a story, it's really good. It's as a non-horror piece, it's a really good story.
Yeah.
Like because it deals a lot with like sort of the. So it's like the best thing I would. This is emotional baggage simulator, and I kind of really like that. Like I think that's something like a lot of people can sort of like relate to, and I think it was written in such a like convincing and like it's really easy to sympathize with the narrator. I think.
Yeah,
because it never dwells too hard on being like where it's pitiful, you know.
Right.
And so like that's kind of, like the character's strong and he's strong in his own sense, but he's also got like this crippling weakness, I guess. So it's cool to see someone like who's not just like a damsel in distress, but like has like a fundamental flaw, right. And that I'm not like I don't want to throw a brick at them. So
yeah, no, it was nice like blending of genres. It was sort of horror mixed with like suspense. A story about.
It's like a thriller, I would say. It's like a.
Yeah, it's like I think it's like a horror mixed with like a story of loss, story about loss, and you blended them really well together.
Yeah, it was what I would call it. This is a very nice character piece. It's a character analysis, I guess. And I have like a weak spot for stories that kind of take that sort of archetype. I like things that examine characters a lot, and I feel like this did because it literally feels like because there's so much color and texture in like the narration style that like it literally feels like you're sitting there picking this dude's brain apart. And it's really nice. Kudos to you. If you liked the story or if you didn't, go ahead and leave that in the comment section. You know, that's gonna be it for this video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, sub to the channel if you haven't already. Because like if you haven't subbed to this channel, like you're fucked up, dude. Come on. It's not a free ride, dude. You don't. That's not how this works.
What are you waiting for?
What are you waiting for? Sub to us. Yeah, so like click the bell too, so you're notified whenever we put these fucking videos out, because we do them pretty consistently. Check out the We Get Bodied series. We're really proud of that series. It's where me and Chris play video games together. It's not always horror games, but the first two are horror games, so you could definitely check those out.
Right now we're playing Hellloooooo Holmes.
Yeah, right now we're playing Sherlock Holmes. And so you can check that out as they come out. We are also playing Sekiro, Shadows Die Nice, and you can check that out on Fridays. We have Sherlock coming out Mondays, and then Shadows Die Nice on
Sekiro, sugar, spice, and everything nice.
Yeah, sugar, spice, and everything nice. Because that game's fucking easy. That game is so easy, it's crazy. So yeah, you guys can check that out on Fridays. We have playlists for all of our series, all like even the Body by the Internet series has a playlist. So if you haven't seen any of the other ones, you can go ahead and check those out. If you have stories that you'd like to hear us review, if you don't like us like talking a lot about the story, well, like, I mean, sorry that these episodes have been mostly that lately. Like, we've just been feeling kind of like analytical.
Just leave us feedback.
Yeah, leave feedback. But we were just sharing our thought. I felt like, because Chris did kind of bring it up, is most of the time we don't really talk about the stories we like. Most of the time we didn't we didn't get that in depth. I mean, if you would rather us be like really succinct about it, just give like a number rating and like kind of our byline. Go ahead and leave us feedback. It's all entirely up to you. But and if you want them in smaller bites, maybe if they pass like a certain time threshold, maybe we'll only do one story an episode. So that's another thing we can also play around with. So give us feedback if you feel it'd be easier to put them in more digestible chunks, if that's something you guys are into or whatever. But that's gonna do it for this one, guys. Have a good night and
try not to get bodied.
We love you.
I'm not gonna say it. All right, I love you.
Thanks, dude. I love you too.
Not you.
Fuck you, dude.
Them.
Fuck them? They're our fans, bro. Come on.
Is this still recording?
Yeah, I forgot to tell you guys to subscribe to my Twitch.
No, not fuck them. That's not what I was trying to say.
Yeah, but subscribe to my Twitch at twitch.tv. Follow me at Twitch at twitch.tv/Nathan_Crash and share our shit, like, please, because again, that's good for us. That's good for everybody. Okay, bye.